Captain Velthak stared at the glowing screen in front of him, his three eyes blinking rapidly as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The survey ship Star Warden had been traveling through this quiet corner of the galaxy for weeks, cataloging planets and checking for new forms of life. Most systems they found were empty or had simple creatures that barely knew how to make fire. But this yellow star's third planet was different. Very different. "Commander," called his assistant, a young officer named Crixtal. "The biological scanners are picking up some strange readings from the surface." Velthak moved his long, thin fingers across the control panel, bringing up detailed images of the planet below. What he saw made his stomach turn cold. The planet was covered with creatures that walked on two legs, had no fur, and seemed to be incredibly violent. They called themselves humans, according to the communication signals the ship was picking up. These humans had built massive cities that stretched for hundreds of miles. Smoke poured from tall structures, turning the sky gray and dirty. Rivers that should have been blue were brown and filled with strange chemicals. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was what these creatures were doing to each other. As Velthak watched, he could see explosions happening all across the planet. Not natural explosions from volcanoes or lightning, but deliberate ones made by the humans themselves. They had weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. They had flying machines that dropped bombs on their own kind. They had built devices that could poison the air and water for generations. "How many are dying down there?" Velthak asked quietly. Crixtal checked his instruments. "The computer estimates about 50,000 per day, sir. Sometimes more when they have what they call wars." 50,000. Every single day. Velthak had been studying alien species for over 30 years, and he had never seen anything like this. Most intelligent creatures learn to work together once they develop technology. They figured out that cooperation was better than fighting. But these humans seemed to get more violent as they got smarter. The ship's main computer finished its full analysis and displayed the results. Velthak read through the report with growing horror. The humans had created weapons that could destroy all life on their planet several times over. They called them nuclear weapons, and had thousands of them pointed at each other. They had deadly gases that could kill millions of people. They had diseases locked away in laboratories that could wipe out entire continents. But they weren't just dangerous to themselves. The computer had detected their radio signals and translated some of their entertainment. Their movies and stories were full of violence. They seemed to enjoy watching other creatures suffer. They celebrated warriors and conquerors. They made heroes out of people who killed the most enemies. "Sir," Crixtal said nervously, "should we try to make contact? Maybe we can help them learn to be more peaceful." Velthak shook his head slowly. "Look at their history, young one. Every time these humans meet a new group of their own kind, they either try to kill them or make them slaves. What do you think they would do to us? We look nothing like them. We would be the strangest aliens they had ever seen." The captain pulled up more data. These humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Even when they weren't having big wars, smaller groups were always fighting somewhere. They fought over land, over resources, over ideas, over skin color, over which invisible beings they prayed to. It seemed like they would fight over anything. But the scariest part was how good they were at it. In just the last 100 years, they had gone from fighting with simple guns to building weapons that could destroy planets. They were learning and adapting faster than any species Velthak had ever studied. If they ever figured out how to travel between stars, they would become the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Velthak made his decision. He activated the ship's emergency protocols and sent a priority message to Galactic Confederation headquarters. Within minutes, he received authorization to establish a Class XII quarantine zone around the entire solar system. The captain's fingers moved across the control panel, setting up the quarantine beacon. It was a powerful device that would warn any ship that came near about the danger ahead. The beacon would broadcast in all known languages. Warning: dangerous primitive species detected. Extreme violence potential. Quarantine zone established. Do not approach. As the beacon powered up and began transmitting, Velthak felt a mix of sadness and relief. Sadness because somewhere on that beautiful blue planet were billions of creatures who might have been wonderful friends if they had been different. Relief because the galaxy would be safe from them. Will the quarantine hold them? Crixtal asked. They don't have faster-than-light travel yet, Velthak replied. By the time they figure it out, if they don't destroy themselves first, maybe they will have learned to be more civilized. Maybe in a few hundred years, they will be ready to meet the rest of the galaxy. But deep down Velthak doubted it. These humans seemed too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous. They would probably blow up their own planet long before they reached the stars. The quarantine beacon would keep broadcasting its warning into empty space, protecting the galaxy from a threat that had destroyed itself. The Star Warden turned away from Earth and continued on its journey, leaving behind the most dangerous world any of them had ever found. 200 years had passed since the quarantine beacon began its endless warning broadcast. In that time, the galaxy had changed dramatically. The Confederation had grown from a small alliance of 12 worlds to a massive empire spanning thousands of star systems. New species joined almost every year, bringing their knowledge and culture to the growing galactic community. Trade ships moved constantly between the stars, carrying exotic goods and new technologies. The Veltar had perfected their healing crystals that could cure almost any disease. The Corvin had developed machines that could build entire cities in just a few days. The Zephyrians had learned to control gravity itself, making their floating cities some of the most beautiful sights in the galaxy. Peace had become normal. Wars were almost unknown now, settled by negotiation and compromise. Most species had evolved beyond the need for violence, focusing instead on art, science, and exploration. The galaxy was a calm, orderly place where everyone worked together for the common good. In this peaceful universe, Earth's quarantine beacon had become just background noise. It appeared on star charts as a small red dot with a warning symbol, but most pilots barely noticed it anymore. Navigation computers automatically plotted courses around the Forbidden Zone, and nobody gave it much thought. At the Galactic Navigation Academy on Proxima Station, young pilot trainees sometimes pointed at the red zone during their lessons and asked what was there. Instructor Velnari, an elderly Corvin with silver scales and wise eyes, would always give the same answer. "That system contains a failed species," she would say with a sad shake of her head. They were called humans. Very primitive, very violent. They spent all their time fighting and destroying their own world. The quarantine was put up 2 centuries ago to protect the galaxy from them. What happened to them? A young student might ask. They probably killed themselves long ago, Velnari would reply. That's what violent species usually do. They create powerful weapons and then use them on each other until nothing is left. It's quite sad really, but there was nothing we could do to help them. The students would nod seriously and move on to studying safer, more civilized star systems. The red zone on their charts was just a reminder of what could happen when a species chose violence over peace. But the galaxy was wrong about what had happened to Earth. Far from destroying themselves, humans had been busier than ever. The quarantine had actually helped them in an unexpected way. Without alien interference or influence, they had been free to develop their technology naturally, learning from their own mistakes and building on their own discoveries. The early years after the quarantine had been difficult. Humans had continued fighting wars, polluting their environment, and struggling with the same problems that had made them seem so dangerous. But gradually they began to change. The threat of nuclear destruction forced them to learn cooperation. Environmental disasters taught them to respect their planet. Economic crashes showed them the value of working together. By the year 2100, Earth had become a very different place. The major nations had formed a world government that settled disputes through discussion instead of war. Clean energy had replaced fossil fuels, making the skies blue again. Advanced medical technology had eliminated most diseases and extended human lifespans far beyond what had once been possible. But humans didn't stop there. Their natural curiosity and competitive drive pushed them to reach beyond their home planet. They built permanent bases on the Moon and Mars. They established mining operations in the asteroid belt. They sent exploration probes to every planet and moon in their solar system. The breakthrough that changed everything happened in a small laboratory on Luna Station, humanity's largest base on the Moon. Dr. Miho Kim, a brilliant physicist with messy black hair and tired eyes, had been working on faster-than-light travel for over 15 years. Everyone told him it was impossible, that the mathematics didn't work, that humans weren't smart enough to crack such a complex problem. But Miho refused to give up. He worked 18-hour days, filling white boards with equations that looked like abstract art. His team of researchers from around the solar system helped him test theory after theory, failing over and over again but learning something new each time. The answer came to him at 3 in the morning during his 2,847th attempt. He was studying the way spacetime curved around massive objects when he suddenly realized that the equations could be reversed. Instead of matter bending space, space could be made to bend around matter. The mathematics fell into place like puzzle pieces, creating a clear path to practical faster-than-light travel. "Jaiwan, wake up!" Miho shouted to his assistant, who had fallen asleep at her desk. "I think I've got it." Dr. Jaiwan Lee rubbed her eyes and looked at the calculations Miho was frantically writing on the board. As she read through the equations, her eyes grew wide with excitement. This could actually work, she whispered. If we can generate enough energy to create the space-time bubble. The fusion reactors can handle it, Miho said, his voice shaking with excitement. We've been building them bigger and more powerful for decades. We have enough energy to power a small AudioBook drive. Within 6 months, they had built humanity's first faster-than-light engine. It wasn't very big or very fast compared to what they hoped to build eventually, but it worked. The test flights around the solar system proved that humans could finally reach for the stars. As Miho watched the final calibrations being completed on their prototype starship, he felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. Humanity was about to take its first steps into the larger galaxy. They had no idea what they would find out there or what would find them. But after 2 centuries of growth and learning, humans were finally ready to discover they weren't alone in the universe. The research vessel New Horizon shimmered into normal space near the bright red star of Proxima Centauri. Inside the ship's command center, Commander Jaiwan Park felt her heart racing with excitement. They had done it. Humanity had actually traveled faster than light and reached another star system. Navigation status report, Jaiwan called out, trying to keep her voice steady despite the historic moment. We're exactly where we plan to be, Commander, replied Navigation Officer Hyunwoo Lee, checking his instruments carefully. 4.5 light years from Earth, right on target? The AudioBook drive worked perfectly. Jaiwan looked out at the alien stars surrounding them and felt a deep sense of pride. After centuries of dreaming about reaching the stars, humans had finally made it happen. But their celebration was interrupted by an urgent beep from the sensor array. Commander, Hyunwoo said, his voice suddenly tense, I'm picking up something strange. There's an artificial signature about 2 kilometers to our left. It's definitely not natural. Artificial? You mean like a space station? No ma'am. It's moving. I think it's a ship. Jaiwan felt her excitement turn to nervousness. They had hoped to find signs of alien life, but she hadn't expected to encounter other beings on their very first trip. Put it on the main screen. The view screen flickered and showed a sleek, silver vessel unlike anything humans had ever built. It was about the same size as the New Horizon but shaped completely differently, with flowing curves instead of straight lines. Strange symbols glowed along its hull, and energy readings showed it was definitely powered by some kind of advanced technology. My God, whispered Communications Officer Soyeon Kim. We're really not alone. Meanwhile, aboard the Theknari patrol ship Swift Wind, Captain Zekmori was staring at his own screens in complete shock. The readings were impossible. According to all galactic records, the quarantine species from the Forbidden Solar System couldn't travel faster than light. They were supposed to be primitive savages who had probably destroyed themselves centuries ago. But here was a ship that had clearly come from that direction using some kind of FTL drive. The design was crude compared to modern Confederation vessels, but it was definitely capable of interstellar travel. Send an immediate alert to Confederation Command, Zekmori ordered his crew. Tell them the quarantine has been breached. The humans are loose. Back on the New Horizon, Jaiwan was trying to figure out how to handle humanity's first contact with an alien species. She remembered her training about peaceful exploration and decided to follow the protocols they had developed. Soyeon, start broadcasting mathematical sequences, she ordered. Prime numbers, basic equations, anything that shows we're intelligent and peaceful. Maybe they'll understand that we want to communicate. The human ship began transmitting simple mathematical patterns along with pictures showing Earth, human biology, and peaceful symbols. They included recordings of human music and art, hoping to show that they were a civilized species despite their violent history. But Captain Zekmori wasn't interested in cultural exchange. He had standing orders that were 200 years old, and they were very clear about what to do if the quarantine species ever left their solar system. Attention human vessel, Zekmori broadcast in multiple languages, you are in violation of Galactic Confederation Quarantine Protocol 77 Alpha. Return to your containment zone immediately or face the consequences. On the New Horizon, the translation computers worked frantically to decode the alien message. When the meaning became clear, Jaiwan felt confused and hurt. Containment zone? Quarantine? She said to her crew. What are they talking about? We just want to explore and make friends. Commander, Hyunwoo reported, the alien ship is powering up what look like weapons. I think they're serious about wanting us to leave. Jaiwan tried broadcasting again, this time with even clearer peaceful intentions. She included images of humans helping each other, building cities together, and exploring space. But Zekmori's response was to fire a warning shot across the New Horizon's bow. They shot at us. Soyeon exclaimed. The situation was spiraling out of control. Jiwon didn't want humanity's first contact to turn into a fight, but the alien ship was clearly hostile. When Zekmori fired a second warning shot, this one closer to the hull, she had to make a decision. Hyunwoo evasive maneuvers. Try to get us out of their weapon range. What happened next shocked Captain Zekmori and his crew. The human ship moved like nothing they had ever seen before. Instead of following predictable flight patterns like civilized vessels, it twisted and spun through space in ways that seemed impossible. Hyunwoo had learned to fly in Earth's competitive military academies, where pilots were trained to think like fighter pilots rather than peaceful explorers. The New Horizon danced between energy beams, rolled under plasma bursts, and used maneuvers that violated every rule of proper space navigation. Zekmori's gunners couldn't get a lock on the wildly moving target. How are they doing that? One of his officers asked in amazement. But Hyunwoo wasn't just running away. Using skills learned from centuries of human warfare, he analyzed the alien ship's design and found its weak points. With surgical precision, he fired the New Horizon's defensive weapons at specific locations, disabling the alien ship's engines without destroying it. The swift wind drifted helplessly in space, its crew injured but alive. And then something happened that Zekmori would never forget for the rest of his life. Instead of finishing off their defeated enemy, the humans immediately began rescue operations. Medical teams beamed over to treat injured aliens. Engineers worked to repair life support systems. The same species that had just defeated his ship with impossible tactics was now risking their own lives to save his crew. As human medics gently treated his wounded navigator, Zekmori realized that everything the galaxy thought about humans might be completely wrong. The news traveled faster than any starship could fly. Within hours of Captain Zekmori's emergency report, every major world in the Confederation knew that the quarantined humans had somehow escaped their solar system. Communication networks buzzed with worried messages as government officials tried to understand what this meant for galactic security. Admiral Kaelven sat in his office on the military headquarters world of Vel Prime, reading the incident report for the 5th time. His 4 arms moved nervously as he processed the information. According to Zekmori, the humans had not only achieved faster-than-light travel, but they had also defeated a modern patrol ship using tactics no civilized species would even consider. They moved like madmen, Zekmori had written in his report. No regard for proper navigation protocols. They twisted and spun through space as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. Our targeting computers couldn't track them because they weren't following any logical flight patterns. But what disturbed Kaelven even more was what happened after the battle. The humans had immediately begun helping their defeated enemies. They had risked their own lives to save alien crew members they had never met before. It was behavior that didn't match anything in the old quarantine files. Kaelven activated his communication system and called for an emergency meeting of the Confederation Council. We need to review everything we know about this species, he told the gathered representatives. Something doesn't add up. Dr. Yairanon, the galaxy's most respected expert on alien biology, was given access to the original quarantine records that had been sealed away for 2 centuries. What she found in the ancient files made her scales turn pale with worry. The old survey reports painted a picture of humans that was both fascinating and terrifying. Yes, they were violent and aggressive, but they were also incredibly adaptable. Every time they faced a problem, they found a way to solve it. Every time they encountered a disaster, they learned from it and became stronger. Look at this, Yairanon told the Emergency Council, projecting the ancient data onto the main screen. The original survey team documented over 300 major wars in human history. But instead of weakening them, each conflict pushed them to develop new technologies. They went from throwing rocks to splitting atoms in just a few thousand years. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they studied the human development timeline. Most civilized species took millions of years to progress from primitive tools to space travel. Humans had done it in less than 10,000. They don't just adapt, Yairanon continued, her voice growing more concerned. They weaponize everything. They turned their disasters into learning experiences. They used their wars to advance their science. They even used their own violent nature to develop better ways of working together. Admiral Kaelven leaned forward in his chair. Are you saying the quarantine wasn't meant to protect us from primitive savages? No, Yairanon replied grimly. It was meant to protect us from a species that learns and grows stronger from every challenge. The original survey team didn't quarantine them because they were weak. They quarantined them because they were too dangerous to let loose in the galaxy. As if to prove her point, reports began flooding in from across Confederation space. Human ships were appearing in multiple star systems, and each encounter was more surprising than the last. Captain Nari Choi of the human exploration vessel Endeavour had been peacefully surveying the Rigel system when she detected a distress call. A Corvan colony transport was under attack by Zephyrian pirates who were trying to steal the ship's valuable cargo. The Corvan were a peaceful species who had never developed advanced military technology. Their transport ship was slow and poorly armed, making it an easy target for the fast pirate vessels. The colony ship's captain had already prepared to surrender when the human ship arrived. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. Captain Choi analyzed the situation in seconds and came up with a battle plan that used the pirates' own speed against them. She positioned her ship near a large asteroid and used it as cover while the pirates attacked. Then, instead of fighting them directly, she used her ship's mining lasers to break apart the asteroid, creating a cloud of debris that the fast pirate ships couldn't navigate safely. Trapped in the debris field, the pirates were forced to slow down, giving Choi the advantage she needed. She disabled their ships one by one, then rescued the crews and turned them over to Confederation authorities. The entire battle lasted less than 20 minutes. How did she think of that so quickly? Wondered General Tikvar of the Corvan Defense Force. We've been fighting pirates for decades and we never thought to use asteroids as weapons. Meanwhile, on the medical research station of Kepler-7, Dr. Taeyong Bei was making breakthroughs that stunned the galaxy's best scientists. A plague had been spreading through the outer colonies for 30 years, killing thousands of people from multiple species. The best medical minds in the Confederation had tried everything they could think of, but the disease kept adapting and growing stronger. Dr. Bei approached the problem differently. Instead of trying to kill the plague directly, he studied how it adapted and evolved. Then he used what he called evolutionary pressure mathematics to predict how the disease would change and develop treatments that stayed one step ahead of its mutations. "This is impossible," said Dr. Velkani, the Confederation's chief medical officer. "How can he predict biological evolution with mathematical equations?" "Humans have been fighting diseases for their entire history," Taeyong explained through a translator. "On our world, if you don't stay ahead of viruses and bacteria, they kill you. We learn to think like they do, to predict their moves before they make them." Within 6 months, Taeyong had not only cured the plague but had also developed new methods for treating dozens of other diseases that had puzzled galactic medicine for centuries. As more reports came in, the pattern became clear. Humans didn't just solve problems, they turned problems into advantages. They had spent centuries learning to survive in a dangerous world, and now they were using those survival skills to help others. The galaxy was beginning to realize that they had encountered something completely unprecedented. A species that had transformed their own violent nature into a force for protection and healing. The Great Council Chamber on Confederation Prime had never seen a debate like this one. For 2 centuries, the galaxy's leaders had made decisions in calm, peaceful discussions where everyone agreed on the logical course of action. But today the air crackled with tension as representatives from hundreds of worlds argued about what to do with humanity. Admiral Kael'ven stood at the center of the circular chamber, surrounded by alien beings of every shape and size imaginable. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few were made of living crystal. But all of them were focused on the same question. Should humanity be allowed to join the galactic community, or should they be forced back into quarantine? "The evidence is clear," Kael'ven said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "These humans are not the primitive savages we thought they were. In just 6 months, they have proven themselves to be valuable allies and skilled problem solvers. I recommend we offer them full membership in the Confederation." A murmur of worry rippled through the assembled delegates. Representative Tikmori of the Zephyrian Empire stood up, his blue skin shimmering with nervous energy. "But Admiral," he said, "they are still incredibly dangerous. They defeated one of our patrol ships using tactics that no civilized species would consider. What happens when they decide we are their enemies?" Before Kael'ven could answer, the chamber doors opened and a small group of humans walked in. Leading them was Ambassador Soyeon Kim, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair who had spent the last month learning to communicate with alien species. Behind her came a mixed group of humans and aliens working together as a team. "Honored Council," Soyeon said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation devices, "we understand your fears about our species. We know that our history looks violent and scary to civilizations that have lived in peace for thousands of years." She paused and looked around the chamber, making eye contact with as many delegates as possible. "We won't lie to you about what we are. Humans developed on a dangerous world where only the strongest and smartest survived. We learned to fight because if we didn't fight, we died. We learned to compete because competition made us better. We learned to adapt because the alternative was extinction. Some of the alien delegates shifted nervously in their seats, but Soyan continued. But we also learned something else during our long quarantine. We learned that our greatest strength isn't our ability to fight. It's our refusal to give up on anyone, even people who start out as our enemies. She gestured to the group behind her. Captain Daesung-Oh here commanded the rescue mission that saved an entire Corvan colony from a volcanic eruption. His team worked for 72 hours straight, using human engineering techniques to build emergency shelters that kept 8,000 aliens alive until help arrived. A tall, serious-looking man stepped forward and bowed respectfully to the council. The Corvan people had never seen humans before, he said through the translator. They were afraid of us at first. But when their children were in danger, none of that mattered. We just did what needed to be done. Soyan pointed to a woman with short black hair and tired eyes. Dr. Jisoo Lee has spent the last 3 months sharing human medical knowledge with alien doctors. She's helped develop treatments for diseases that have been killing people across the galaxy for decades. And she's done it all for free, asking for nothing in return except the chance to help. Dr. Lee stepped forward shyly. On Earth, we learned that disease doesn't care about politics or borders, she said quietly. A virus that kills humans will also kill our neighbors. So we had to learn to work together or we would all die together. The same is true in space. Finally, Soyan introduced a young man with calloused hands and oil stains on his uniform. Engineer Minjun Park has revolutionized space travel by applying what humans call chaos mathematics to hyperspace navigation. His new routes have cut travel time between major worlds by 30%, making trade and communication faster than ever before. Minjun looked embarrassed by the attention. I just thought about space the way we think about weather on Earth, he said. Instead of fighting the chaos, we learned to use it. The same principles work in hyperspace. As the humans spoke, the mood in the chamber began to change. Delegate after delegate stood up to share stories of how humans had helped their people. They told of rescue missions during natural disasters, of medical breakthroughs that had saved millions of lives, of engineering solutions that had seemed impossible until humans tried them. Representative Velkani of the Theknari spoke with tears in her large eyes. My nephew was on Captain Zekmori's ship when they first encountered the humans. He was badly injured in the battle, and the human medics saved his life. They didn't know him, they had never seen our species before, but they treated him like he was one of their own children. The debate continued for hours, but slowly the council began to reach a consensus. Yes, humans were dangerous, but they were dangerous in the way that a knife was dangerous. A tool that could hurt or help depending on how it was used. Council Chairman Veltoric, an ancient being whose crystal body had grown wise over thousands of years, finally called for silence. The chamber fell quiet as he prepared to announce the decision that would change galactic history. In all my years serving this council, he said, his voice like the ringing of distant bells, I have never seen a species transition from quarantine to membership. The very idea seemed impossible. How could beings dangerous enough to require isolation ever become safe enough to join our community? He paused and looked directly at the human delegation. But today we have learned that safety and danger are not opposites. Sometimes the most dangerous individuals are also the most protective. Sometimes the skills that make someone a deadly enemy also make them a powerful friend. The chamber held its breath. For the first time in Confederation history, I hereby declare that humanity will transition directly from Class XII quarantine status to full membership in the Galactic Confederation. The chamber erupted in cheers, applause, and various alien sounds of celebration. As the noise died down, technicians across the galaxy began the process of shutting down the quarantine beacon that had warned ships away from Earth for 200 years. Far away, on a quiet space station near the edge of Confederation space, an old Veltar veteran named Velthak watched the news with wonder. He was the same officer who had placed the quarantine beacon around Earth all those years ago, convinced that humanity would destroy itself long before reaching the stars. Now he watched human and alien children playing together in the station's recreation area, their laughter filling the corridors with joy. A human girl was teaching a young Corvan how to play a game called Tag, while a Zephyrian child showed a human boy how to make his skin change colors. Velthak realized that his greatest mistake had become the galaxy's greatest gift. By isolating humanity, he had given them time to learn the most important lesson of all, that true strength comes not from the ability to defeat your enemies, but from the wisdom to turn your enemies into friends. The stars no longer seemed like a vast, cold, empty place. Humanity had brought something precious to the galaxy that had been missing for too long, the unshakable belief that everyone deserves a second chance, and that no one should ever be left behind.